Uh, we have here Charles Slayton, who is the coxswain on the coxswain on the USS Natchez from 42 to 45. And Charles, could you tell us a little bit about your joining the service and your time on the Natchez?
Well, I joined, I went down, signed up August 24th, 1942. I was called to duty in San Diego September the 2nd, 1942. Took my training there in San Diego, and when I got through with our training, they put me and 10 other guys on a 40-foot whaleboat, took us over to North Island in San Diego, and Ford aircraft carrier, out to Mohawk CVE-18. And about 10 days after I got on that, while we were headed off to Noumea, New Caledonia. They claim on that carrier there was a submarine that fired 2 torpedoes at the ship, but it never didn't hit. That's what the rumors was aboard the ship at the time. But I got to Noumea, New Caledonia. They had a whole load of planes on that carrier, and they started to caliform off. They brought them over to replace planes that had been knocked down from other carriers. And calico did not work. We lost 3 planes right off the bat. And they brought out a big old crane and unloaded the other planes off and took them ashore. Next morning, they had me and about 15 other guys sent over to Noumea, New Caledonia. We went over and spent the night. Next morning, they woke us up early, about 5 o'clock, told us to be prepared to board the Natchez. I don't know what the Natchez was at the time, but you don't question the Navy. And so me and the buddy I was going with was Ralph Wells. He was from Dalton. And we were good buddies there on the ship. And he was with me too at the time. And we had to go down to the dock. Of course, they took us down there. And we had to wait till the Natchez sent a whaleboat out to get us. There was 10 of us all told on there. And we got over to the Natchez. She was anchored in the harbor there in Noumea, New Caledonia. And we had to climb up the checkers ladder with our sea bag and all, which was rough. And we got settled in there, and they fed us a little bit. I stayed on the Natchez from 42 to 45. And when I got aboard the Natchez, we went to Guadalcanal to refuel. We refueled several ships there, and went to up to the New Hebrides, I believe it was, fuel ships there, and we did a few fillings underway. And we wound up, for some reason, I went back to the States. We got a bunch of stuff on there, food and everything, and they give us all foul weather clothing. We knew we was going to Alaska. And we got aboard there, got all the equipment on there and everything, and we headed off to Dutch Harbor. Well, we on our way there to Dutch Harbor, we run into mountain waves.
I said, what you working on today?
We was in that for well over 3 days and 4 nights. We didn't make any headway, but it was really something scary. We had anywhere from 50 to 100 foot waves. That sounds like you exaggerate, but I'm not. And, we had a wonderful captain on board our ship who, he stood over, I was on the wheel at the time when he was there, and he kept running, taking his finger and running his ring around his finger there and watching those waves. And he'd have us either go left or right with the wheel. And we stayed in that thing for a day. We didn't make any headway at all. And so we come out of it, we had no casualties. We had our 40-foot whale broke loose. And the captain, he didn't want to lose it. He wanted to volunteer to go out there and help him. Nobody went because the officer Dick said, don't go out there, it's not worth it. So he got the thing secured enough that enough of the guys went out there and helped him. And they saved the boat. Because he knew if we ever lost it, we'd never get another one. And we had on into Dutch Harbor, the Japanese just got through bombing it before we went in. And we didn't have much. The weather was bad, it was real foggy. You couldn't even see your hand, front of your hand, your face, just real foggy. And they sent us up, it kind of lightened up the next morning, and we was in the Bering Sea. We went up in there to hide out, waiting for the invasion of Kiska. Went up there and we was right off the coast of Siberia. We could see Siberia where we was at. And those were uncharted channels and things up there, so we didn't know. I know the captain did not I don't know anything about it, but the captain, he was worried about that getting too close in, and the Russians would come out there and bomb us. And we finally had the most mates up there. They were throwing a line over, measuring the depth of the water. That way we didn't have a barometer or anything on the ship at the time. And it got to a point that it was getting too shallow. The captain threw her in reverse, and we turned around, went up, back, and we just went around in circles the rest of the day and night. And then we went joined the fleet the next day. And we went into Kiska. When we went into Kiska there, I happened to be on the bridge there when that happened. And the Army, Seabees and things went ashore, but they couldn't find the enemy. Japanese had come in that night when the fog was in, and the silk submarines that took all the men off of there. They left a few. They got everything out of there. They had a bunch of booby traps. And when they secured the island down good. And then we head back to Dutch Harbor. And we had a black fellow there on a ship there who had a busted appendix. And he died. So we went to Kobe, Alaska, pulled in there, and they took him off. And next morning, at sunbreak, the captain got word that there was a submarine in the channel there, where all ships are scattered. We come flying out of there at blank speed, and this 90-day wonder turned out of the channel, and we hit the ground and rocks. And boy, when we hit that, we was going pretty fast as the ship could go. And it knocked everybody down. It just stopped all of a sudden. It just did stop. And we were stuck. And the admiral, whoever he was, I don't know who he was, but he told the captain about go ahead and prepare to ban the ship. The captain says, no way he's going to ban his ship. So he waited till the tide come in. He had 2 tugboats come in, and they pulled us off. Then we went to Kodiak, I believe it was, and dumped what oil we had off. It hadn't leaked out. stayed in dry docks there for 2 weeks, while they repaired it. And the first thing I had to do was, while we was there in dry docks there, me and two other guys, we was looking over the side. We'd never been in dry docks before, so we didn't know what it was, you know. We kept us curious. It was quite a ways down there, that cement floor down there. This old smart aleck postal mate come up there and says, told us to get ready, prepare to go over the side and paint. And Goins, he stand there and told him, he said, I'm not going over. He said, I'll put you on report. And Goins said, what you do, I'll throw you over the board. And about that time, one of the workers come by, and he heard us fighting, arguing about it. And he said, there's no need of y'all think about painting. We're going to paint the ship. We're going to camouflage it. So we ended that. But we wound up going back to Dutch Harbor. And we was in the division of Tattoo or something like that. I can't remember those names for a while. We was in that invasion. And then we come back and went down to New Hebrides Island. We started refueling down there. And we went out quite a bit to refuel while we was underway. We get low and we think, well, we're going into port or something. And another tanker come by and top us off. And once in a while we get to go into port there, and we can have beer parties. Oh boy, hot beer was good. And we enjoy ourselves, though. We get to go over. We only got to go over about 4 hours, and then we had to go back aboard. And they let another group go over. And anyway, we our worst time we ever had was when we were with the fleet, and it was quite a beautiful day. Water was smooth. I guess everybody was asleep or something. But anyway, a Japanese plane flew over. I guess he was a reconnaissance plane, and spotted us. And it was done too late when they found out. Of course, they sent off a plane and shot it down, but we knew that he'd already radioed in where we was at and everything. So they sent the Nietzsche's and a destroyer off to the side, and the fleet went on in. And when they did, they attacked the fleet. And that's when the Princeton was sunk. Princeton was a carrier, big carrier too. And it was a rough time. We lost a lot of ships, and they come and got our doctor off of our ship. They sent a destroyer by there. We had to put him on one of the Beecher's buoy, put him over on the destroyer. They kept him about a week. Then he got to come back when he was in port there. And went on into South China Sea. And we loaded up, getting ready to go into the South China Sea, and we was in Lady Gup. And the ship coming in was one of these Kaiser Coppins ship that come in, and my uncle was on there. And he sent a message over to the Nietzsche's to tell me how the messenger come told me. And he was going in, we was going out. And that's when we went in South China Sea. And while he was in there, his ship caught a Cosmopolitan, and they had a bunch of soldiers on there. And he said he wrote in the paper, he got a big write-up on that, and he saved the ship. He said they had flagged the fire and everything, had to step over bodies and everything to put the fire out on that ship, and he saved it. And he got enough equipment from other ships there to get the ship back to the States. And in the meantime, we was going into South China Sea. And it was at night. And on each side of us was Japanese. We had to be going there twice, you know. And I don't remember what type of ships they were, but two ships bumped each other. And one of them left the light where you could see. And I heard rumors was that the admiral who was with us at that time, on the carrier, he told them if they didn't get that light out, he'd sink them. But they got it out, but I don't know what happened to them two ships that hit each other. But we got through there and they never did catch us. We went in South China Sea and we fueled quite a few ships, and then we started out. What we did was we run into a big old typhoon. And then I tell you, I think we lost four destroyers and a bunch of small ships in that. They run out of fuel. And they couldn't come alongside us to meet. The weather was too bad. It was bad. And the waves were washing over the decks and things. And they capsized. We saw we couldn't do nothing for them. But they did come around afterwards, and well, we had to fuel while that storm was on. Some of them that was saved, they didn't go down. And that was really rough. We almost lost the bid on that, especially on the Bard Well deck in the 2nd Division. That waves come over into Washington. If it hadn't been for that gate fence, you might say, anyway, you know what I'm talking about.
The railing.
Yeah. If they hadn't been there, we'd lost a couple of men there. They squashed them off, and then they grabbed that thing and held on. And some of them, but we went on through that, built that, and we wound up when we come out of that, of course, I went over to Coral Sea, and going through there while we had to get a guy that he was out in the moons, you know what they call him? Anyway, we had to have a guy come out and knew the route there, but that's what they used to call the sailor's ship's graveyard, because it was coral reefs everywhere. And he come aboard, I took over the ship and brought us right on through that thing. We'll wind up over in the ocean. And then we come out, and we was in the invasion of Saipan, and the invasion of, an invasion of New Hebrides before that. And we went in Esprit Santos, New Hebrides, and islands there. As we was going in the harbor there's a big old ship laying on this side. One of our ships too. And we got to go in there and had to go, and we got to go up, that's when we got to have a beer party. We went in and anchored it, the captain, about 4 o'clock that afternoon, he said, anybody wants to go swimming, can go swimming. And he got the port equipment out, two or three guys in over there in case we got in trouble. And I don't know what's about me then, I wasn't drinking anything. I went up on that forecastle up there, and I dived off of that ship, and I thought I was never going to hit bottom. I just kept going down, and I got scared too, and I come up, man, and then they hollered over the wellboat, asked me if I needed any help. I said no, I did, but I didn't admit it. And I finally made it over to the drinking slider. I like to never got up. The old captain was making fun of me up there. He's watching. And I finally got up, and Boy, I never did go swimming again. That was one of the scariest times I ever had on board that ship. We went into Okinawa, no, we went into Iwo Jima. We come flying in there and kept dropped anchor in the wrong place. We was right there at the foot of the mountain. And the Japanese up there could just shoot right down on us, you know. This admiral come in on the, I don't know what they call it back then, but anyway, like a radio message for the captain to get the hell out of there. They're gonna hit you from that distance where you're at. So the captain had to pull the anchor up and back up as fast as he could, and he turned around, had to find another place to park, drop anchor. We was right real close to that thing. Everybody wondered, you know, why he gets so close, you know. Anyway, we was right there, we saw them when they lost the flag up. We could see the Marines going up the mountain there with flamethrowers and everything. You see everything going on. It was a bad war over there. They lost about 5,000 men there. After that, well, we fueled a bunch of ships out at sea, and then we come up to the Okinawa invasion. We went in there, there was 4 of us who went in the harbor at the time, and right behind us was an ammunition shed. Well, they got in, blew it up, and we got in, and the other 2 ships got in, we all anchored there, and it was lighting up the sky, everything at night, and they towed it out and they sunk it, quieting it down. And boy, I tell you, them things come in from every direction they was. And they come so low, your guns wouldn't get down just so far, you know. You couldn't get your guns down too low. And they come in real low, just even. Some of them got knocked down with waves, they were so low. And they come right into you. And our 5-inch gun got one come in on us. And we still there before we pulled out. I had to go up and stand and watch up on the bridge. The captain, he stood up there, he didn't do anything, he did, he had his ring going around and around, you know, he was watching everything. He couldn't hardly secure anything, because by the time he turned around, there'd be a bunch of them come in. And they come in from every way. They come in, like the officer in charge, he tells them, don't watch what's going on the other side, watch your own side. Don't take the eyes off of your section, because they're going to come in. That's the idea, get you started over here and everybody watching them over there. And on GQ, I got to be a cue setter. And we fired, we didn't hit nothing. We had that new ammunition too, and it was the kind that had magnetic in it, but it would get so close to a plane or anything, it would explode. We didn't even get close enough for one to explode. And Officer Deck there, he's always giving us orders, you know, and tell us where to shoot and to set the fuse at a certain date, time, and everything. We got down to, I think, about 4 seconds fuse, the lowest I ever set one. Still didn't get none. A 5-inch gun got one. And, yeah, it was one of the worst things at the time we ever had. But one of the worst, we was in 3 typhoons. I tell you, them things, they did more damage than the Japs did. I seen aircraft carriers with their deck pinned in, with it hitting those waves. The old Alta Baja, which I was on when I went across on, she, got flooded. Gosh, when me and Ralph Wells were asleep, that's when we slept in a hammock there on that carrier, in an elevator shaft. And the waves coming in over there, they said it flooded that. The way I know is because I picked it up on the internet. They tell us all about it. And she lost all of her planes. She lost every plane she had up there. Lost the walk and things and running in the broke loose there, even in the hangar deck. And, when I went, I should have said it more down, but I went across the equator on that carrier. Boy, I tell you, they took it out of us. So we'd never been across before. And, I got a nice, real nice certificate when we went across the 180th meridian up in the Bering Sea. In fact, I sent you another picture. And we come back from Alaska. They sent me over to, well, I was in Japan. We was there with it, they signed every piece and everything. And I had enough points to get out. And there were several others over there did too, had points enough to get out. We had so much sea time and everything. I wasn't even married then. If you got married, you even got more points. I had enough to get out, and they put us on a doggone LST to go to Guam. And we was going out of the harbor in Japan. So, no kidding, we come within 10 feet of hitting the mine. Boy, that made that scary. Everybody on deck there seen that thing hollered up on the wheelhouse. But nothing they could do, because them things don't, you can't turn them like you can a regular ship and everything. It didn't hit us. And took me over on Guam. And one old barracks over there, we had beer. It was hot. And you had to buy a whole case at a time. They wouldn't say just one beer or anything. I had to buy a whole case, and they just put this guy down in the bunk, you know, make a hot beer. I was over there for over 30 days. And when I come back to the States, I come back on a transport, and the Nietzsche's was already there in San Pedro. That's rough. It happened to me one time, when we hit that mine, I come back off the leave, they give us 2 weeks, give us a week leave, we got 2 weeks of leave, and they took a month to get us out of there. I met this girl there. And, I went out with her till I got pulled out, until we pulled out, you know. I didn't know the girl real well. And we got right. She wrote me and I wrote her. So when I come out of the Navy, I come in Port Miami, San Pedro, and I went home. And when I got home, I got all my girlfriends had got married, gotten all that stuff, you know. And I decided, well, I'll call her up. I called her. And I asked if she was going to get married, and she did. So I went on back out to California. I married her. And it was understood that they would, she's going to live out there, down there with me in Chattanooga. Because I was going to business with my dad. But she stayed about six weeks, and that was it. And I had to move back out to California with her. And I had 2 daughters born out there. Her mother was born out there. And I tell you, I don't know what happened to me. My mother must have been pretty crazy or something.
How long were y'all married?
16 years ago. I lived out there in California 16 years. I took them out. And, boy, I tell you, that was rough going. I had a heart attack when I was 37 years old. I almost died. And she wouldn't even come to the hospital to visit me or anything. I wound up when I moved out there, I had to go into the Naval Hospital out there in Long Beach, California. And they operated on me, and I was in there for 2 weeks. And a month later, they had to go back and do it again. I was in there for over a month and a half. Everybody would like to go then until I kept telling them I had to get out because I had to go to work. I just wanted to play for Long Beach Naval Hospital. I didn't have no insurance. Thank goodness I was in the reserve.
Charles, how old were you when you went in?
16.
16.
And,
Are you in the underage book?
no, I never cycled. I wasn't that much underage. October the 7th is my birthday. And I was actually sworn in on the 3rd day of September. So that's only just about a month and a half, something like that.
Close enough.
But, I wanted to go in, the reason I went and did that is I wanted to go in with a couple of guys I know going in, and they were all older than me. Dad, I told him, he wasn't gonna sign papers, mother they didn't want to sign the papers for me to go in. I told him, I said, well, I'm gonna get married. And Dad signed the papers. But it was wonderful. I mean, I tell you, my time in the Navy, I'd do it again. I'd do it again.
Charles, that's a great story. Appreciate you sharing it with us.
I can't remember everything. I just don't remember things like I used to.
Well, I think you've done a great job. Thanks again.
Okay.